Let's also welcome in Marilinda Garcia. She's a Republican candidate for the United States House of Representatives in the Live Free or Die state of New Hampshire. Marilinda, we thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
You have been given the title of Rising Star by the National Republican Campaign Committee, and it's nice to get those accolades from the NRCC. So what is it about your platform that makes you a rising star in the Republican Party and makes you the next Congresswoman from New Hampshire?
I would say it's less about the platform and that, I've served for 4 terms as a state legislator, and I support limited government, personal responsibility, individual liberty, and really it's just clear to everyone that there's a lack of trust right now in our federal government, and it's just overbearing, it's intrusive, and I think the Rising Star designation has more to do with the fact that, I'm a millennial, I'm someone that's worked to affect change in a positive way, again, putting more choice in the hands of consumers and citizens in the state, and see what happens when you have an overbearing federal government. So I decided to run for Congress for all of those reasons, but also because looking forward, millennials for the first time don't think that our future will be rosier than generations before us, and that's really unfortunate. And it's clear that this idea and way of status quo, I guess you could say, in Washington of kicking the can down the road isn't going to work anymore.
Marilinda, let me ask you something. Historically, the GOP has subtly captured the vote of married women. Now, is the party, in your opinion, doing enough to capture the vote of single, unmarried women, which obviously can help a lot here?
Yeah, when I talk to people across the district, and I've really tried to be sure I'm accessible and communicative in strong contrast to the current Congresswoman who really isn't anywhere. But, women, single women, married women, they're really concerned about safety. They just don't feel safe at this point. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about all of the really lack of opportunities that are occurring due to ever tighter regulatory policies, as well as mandates like Obamacare that, for example, will be reducing the nationwide weekly employment rate by 4 million full-time workers, and women will bear the brunt of that. And so they're just feeling all of these concerns, and I think at this point, we need to treat them the way we treat all voters, which is that knowing they have a concern about the future of the country. They have a lot of concerns about domestic policy right now, but primarily, if they don't feel safe, all of these other things pale in comparison, to be honest.
Well, Marilinda, during the course of a campaign, we all know campaigns do not occur in a vacuum, and the Democrats have launched an ad attacking you, claiming you are too extreme. They also claim that you're a voice of opposition to the Violence Against Women Act. How do you respond to that criticism?
Sure. It's the usual tactic they have of labeling and scare tactics. They love to use labels, and they never talk about substantive issues or what their own message ought to be. The real point is that I oppose violence against women. When it comes to the act, the federal act, Violence Against Women, here's the facts. On the state level, I voted to ensure stiffer penalties for domestic violence against perpetrators of those crimes, against early release for sex offenders. But when it comes to a massive sweeping piece of federal legislation, in fact, it's gone outside of its original intent and scope related to women. It now deals with men, minorities, Native Americans, immigrants, young people, the elderly, prisoners, and it duplicates a lot of programs offered by other federal agencies, including the Justice Department's Office for Victims of Crime, and numerous programs run by the Department of Health and Human Services. So I think in Washington there's a tendency to put a catchy, feel-good title on a piece of legislation, and then if someone has substantive reasons why not to support it, they then use it as something to beat you over the head with during campaign season, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing as policymakers.
And Marilinda, let's switch gears quickly, if we may. Let's talk about Ebola for a few seconds. And a lot of Republicans are calling for a travel ban. Others don't want it. Where's your stance on that? And we got about 40 seconds, ma'am.
Sure. I think a travel ban would be common sense. This is something, this is a risk we can't take, having Ebola spread here in the U.S. So I don't see why a temporary travel ban from some of these Western African countries wouldn't help. We can still make special exceptions for those humanitarian aid flights, aid workers, supplies. But in terms of just commercial travel and people going about their business, I think it would do a lot to at least be sure we're not helping.
And we will have to leave it there. Marilinda Garcia, candidate for Congress in New Hampshire, thanks very much. Now, something that happened 233 years ago yesterday, the subject of this American moment.
Exactly 6 years and 6 months after the first shots of the Revolutionary War were fired at Lexington and Concord, General George Washington had spent most of the war evading fixed battles against the superior armed British forces. But Providence intervened. Lieutenant General Lord Cornwallis, commander of British forces in Virginia and second in command of all British forces in the American colonies, had moved into a trap, setting up camp in Yorktown. Located on a peninsula and facing the York River, Cornwallis was easily encircled by Continental Army troops on one side and a powerful French fleet on another. On October 6th, Washington's army, now reinforced with 5,500 French troops, were making preparations for their planned assault on the 9th. At the same time, a French fleet, numbering 28 ships of the line, had prevented any chance of a British escape by water. By mid-month, the British were cut off from their supply lines, denying them much-needed food and ammunition. With his forces suffering heavy casualties from Washington's continual artillery bombardment, and knowing his reinforcements were still weeks away, Lord Cornwallis did the unthinkable. He surrendered his forces to what had been called a band of rabble, effectively ending America's war for independence. The date was the 19th of October, 1781. With the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, the war officially came to a close, with America's sovereignty secured and its territories bordered by Canada to the north, Florida to the south, and the Mississippi River to the east.